My name is Sean Schofield. What I do is really lead a team that supports and innovates different ways that students can become more career ready. Students are faced with a very real challenge. How do I define and express the skills that I have? Storytelling, probably the most important skill. Storytellers get hired, storytellers close deals, storytellers get promoted.
I never went to a lecture or anything about storytelling.
They're not necessarily trained on things that become immediately necessary for them right when they leave. But if you don't spend the first time understanding what's important or valuable to the person across from you, the story you tell is basically up in the air. Everybody starts out with unconscious incompetence, which means they don't know what they're not good at yet. Students have to start by putting themselves out there.
How do I show up and on my first day create impact? Really excited to have you on today, Sean. What we're going to do is dive straight in with the first question. Okay, so what's one skill that you have seen change the trajectory of someone's career, and how can a young person start building that skill?
For me, I believe that storytelling and learning how to tell a very coherent story is probably the most important skill that I've seen and that I feel personally that I've spent time developing and that I've seen as a real differentiator for people, because a lot of people have very unique and interesting pathways that they've taken. But to be able to tell that story in a concise, purpose-driven way, and really to get a point across while really being aware of the audience and what they need to hear, I think that will set you apart and also bring you further throughout your career. Because as I tell students constantly, storytellers get hired, storytellers close deals, storytellers get promoted. And if you can do that really effectively and in a powerful way, you're going to stand out in your career.
So here's something crazy. I never went to a lecture or anything about storytelling or got told about it. So I think for a lot of young people, it's like, okay, what is storytelling? What does it mean? And how do I get good at it?
Yeah, that's a really important question, because you're right. And sadly, so many of the challenges that I think students face as they go through higher education is that they're not necessarily trained on things that become immediately necessary for them right when they leave. Storytelling to me is about kind of a two-way street. One, it's first about empathy. It's understanding the audience. It's understanding the person sitting across from you, the audience that's in a space with you, someone on a Zoom screen, and getting at really a quick understanding of what are their needs, what are they after, and what's important to them, and finding a way to add value in the immediate future, like right away. A lot of times I see students get locked into, okay, I have to be a good storyteller, so I immediately have to think of my script and I think of how I convey myself. But if you don't spend the first time understanding what's important or valuable to the person across from you, the story you tell is basically up in the air. Like you might land it and it might be wrong direction. And then I think also the ability to kind of transition in real time, like reading the person that's sitting across from you, is valuable and important. And I think that comes from practice. So with us, one of the ways that we can topically address storytelling at scale is we have students practice interviewing, and they start to really understand, like we can even give people personas and have them be a person that's a recruiter at a bulge bracket financial institution, or someone who's managing a nonprofit and has no time in their day and they're just doing great work, but they're trying to piece it together. And then we can have students kind of tailor the stories based on those people's needs. And when we practice, that's when we start to get good at it. So I think a big challenge that students face, and really anybody faces, is that this cycle of competence is something that I don't think we think a lot about. But in Life and Career Design, which I will call LCDI because it's short form for me, we really focus on the fact that we anticipate that everybody starts out with unconscious incompetence, which means they don't know what they're not good at yet. And if you're unconsciously incompetent, you don't seek help because you don't know you're bad at it yet. Until you reach a point where you try something and you say, oh, wow, I have a gap. I really am not that strong in this area. That's when you start to seek help, because you feel dissonance. You're like, wow, everybody else is better at this than I am. I need to get better at this skill. Then you spend a lot of time on it, you focus on it, and you become consciously competent. So you still have to think a lot about it. It's not natural to you yet, but only through a lot of practice do you get to this unconscious competence where you just do it. It's natural to you. You don't have to spend much mental energy thinking about it. It becomes more of an automatic response, because I tell students constantly, I don't want you for the first time to develop an awareness of your unconscious incompetence when you're sitting across from a recruiter at a job that matters, right? I want to do that with you. I want my team to do that with you because then we can practice. And also, I don't want you to come practice for the first time a week before your interview because interviewing is about nuance and it's about subtle changes that you can make to be a better storyteller. And if you give yourself a week, that's not really enough time to ingrain something so that it becomes more natural. But if you give yourself much more time, it's why in my office and at our college, every single student as a first year student has to take a class with the Life and Career Design Institute. And we really start front ending career development and saying, no, this actually is something that you need to have a little bit more urgency about. It's not something that you can wait until senior year because the things that you can do to be more effective, grow a network, learn how to become a strong storyteller, learn how to adapt, grow an awareness of the fields that are out there that you probably don't know about. You can't do that in one day, or you can't do that in 1 week, or you can't do that in 1 year. It takes time to develop meaningful connections. And we want to give you those skills early so that as you go through this experience, you're nurturing that skill, you're growing that skill, and it becomes so natural to you to say, wow, okay, I know I'm not going to be good at this, but I know I can identify 3 to 4 people that are maybe alumni that are really good at it. And I can start reaching out now and tasking my network with helping me with closing these gaps. And it becomes more of the practice.
Awesome. And just to chop in on it, I think that what you were talking about with the storytelling and identifying the audience, that feels like the 80-20 of that. Like knowing who it is, what they care about, their cultures, their values. If you get that nailed, you can kind of like go into an interview and do good enough no matter what. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's where, interviews, in my opinion, and career success in a large part are developing an understanding and doing your homework first because you can actually read stuff. There's a lot of public stuff. People have LinkedIn. I always say, look at someone's LinkedIn, look at their path. If they have some volunteerism or what, you could start to see what people care about. If they post about something consistently, they probably care about it. If you can read it and let them know, hey, I read this resonated with me. You're aligning yourself with something that they care about or that they think is important. Similarly, if their organization has a mission that it's a really mission-driven organization, being able to utilize that language and being able to understand what it is that their day-to-day is more about, it'll give you a leg up in conversation. And it's not even, it's not dirty or unethical. It's actually just really smart because these are all opportunities. We tell students all the time, you're evaluating a fit as well. I think students get locked into this space where it's like, I go with my hand out and I need a job. And if I get a job, then that's great. And I've lucked out. But in reality, we hope that this is a more conscious decision. We try to help students see themselves as authors of their own story because they need to make the right decision for them. Because what good is it if they're looking for a new job in 1 year anyway, right? Like we're not trying to teach them and set them up for something that they're not actually going to enjoy. It won't resonate with them. It won't align with their values.
Here's something I'm really curious about because I think it's so different, and this will be cool because a lot of people that listen to this are British and from the UK, and so getting a US perspective on this is pretty exciting. But obviously you also have a worldwide understanding. And so you mentioned about like in their first semester of their first year, they have to do a careers design session. Was that right?
Yeah. A course, a whole semester long course with us. Yeah.
And so like that, it says to me that like there's some real urgency that's needed around life and careers design. We don't have that in the UK. It's like first year, meh, who really cares? The advice students get is also that from senior people. Do you think that's a stigma that needs to be broken down a little bit, or like what needs to happen there?
Absolutely. It's a stigma that needs to be broken down. We have to stop in higher education, and higher education is guilty of this. We have to stop seeing career development and the life of the mind as mutually exclusive endeavors. We cannot say, I'm only going to go to college to get smart and not think about career. We have to do it at the same time. It cannot. And what you're talking about here too, this is not the commonplace in the United States either. This is actually something that at the last 2 institutions that I've worked at, I have championed that we need to have 4 years of progressive career development experience. And at most other institutions, including all of the ones that I've worked at, it hasn't happened. So for us to be in this, at the last 2, for me, it has, but for us to be engaging in this work this early and demonstrating that urgency, It's something that every single alum that I talk to says, I wish I had that, but I didn't. And it's sad to me that we are not breaking down that and saying, hey, all of us wish we had more career development, more growing of self-awareness about life and work values, about understanding what I'm curious about understanding how to apply what I'm learning in a classroom outside of a classroom where I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. And that's a huge black eye in higher education. And it's disturbing to me that more institutions are not jumping on this bandwagon because I can prove that it is valuable to the students throughout their career. So we need to be focused on it.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. So how does a young person start? Like someone's not getting access to this that you're talking about and they don't have access to a life and careers design. What like little seed can you plant in them that will get them started, if that makes sense? Like what can you give them?
I think the best thing is, if a campus or if a young person is in a position where they are not yet aware of what they're not good at. And if they're not going to have the designated support, because again, I think it's probably fewer than 5% of all institutions would have a mandatory first year career experience for students. So most students aren't having that. What I would say is putting yourself out there is probably one of the most important things that you could do because only once you do that, and it should be uncomfortable, right? Building a network, it should not just be easy and effortless and comfortable. But in order to do that, like students have to start by putting themselves out there. They have to start by making that cold call, that uncomfortable first email outreach. And I would suggest that they get help wherever they can to start that, knowing that whoever's sitting across from them, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a neighbor or a student that went through their college before them. Their word is not gold, but what they should take their word as is data that can help inform the practice. And that way, as you continually expand that data set, you're going to find what aligns well with you. With students, one of the things that I try to help them understand is I think students often, and I've worked with over 10,000 students in my career, right, as a career development coach. The problem that I see is that I think students place a lot of emphasis on achieving long-term goals to make them happy. And a career cannot make you happy. A career is one important element of a happy life, but a career itself cannot make you happy. You might really enjoy it. You might love the work that you do, but it's not responsible for your happiness. And I think that by helping students understand the scope and the job of a career, but also understand that like, since a career can't make me happy and I'm responsible for being happy now, maybe I need to set more resilient goals. Maybe I need to say, like what we do with our students, I will never ask a student and I'll never tolerate any person on my entire team asking a student, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's a ridiculous question. It has no merit because an 18-year-old or a 22-year-old or a 43-year-old like me, I can't tell you with any good accuracy what I'm going to end up being, right? Because the path is where you learn and the path is where you change and it is fun. Instead, I say, to every student, I want us to challenge them. What can I do in the next 2 weeks? What one action can I make in the next 2 weeks that will have an impact? Either help me get to know myself better, which is always important. Help me understand how the pieces of my story fit together. Help me talk to someone that I don't know and that will expand my network, or ask them to introduce me to someone that maybe is in their network. And if I can do that in 2 weeks, and then after I accomplish that, I set another 2 week goal, and then I set another 2 week goal, what I will do is I will build really strong positive behavior. And if I build strong positive behavior, my goals become more resilient. My success becomes more guaranteed because what I'm doing is saying, I will adapt and I will change. And I won't be happy in 10 years when I'm a doctor. I won't be happy in 7 years when I'm a lawyer. I will find happiness throughout this journey. And to me, that's so much more important and it's so much more achievable for students.
I think it's great advice. I know people who went to careers centers in the UK and things, and they've asked, "Hey, I need help," and the question is, "Okay, so what do you want to do? What do you want to be?"
Yep.
Like, tell us.
Yeah.
And then you're like, "Okay, well, I'm stumped at the first question. I don't know where to go
Yep.
from here."
That's a horrible first question. And the other first question that I hate is when people say, well, what are you passionate about, right? Well, because passion doesn't actually make you good at a career, right? A career should be a combination of values, interest or curiosity, and skill. And passion is not really the driver there, right? Like you might be more interested in something you're passionate about, but I know people who are incredibly successful and very satisfied in their careers, and they're not passionate about what they do. They get that passion satiated in other areas of their life, and it's much healthier for them because they're really good at their job, and their job affords them the comfort or whatever ability they need to live a passionate life. For a lot of people, that'd be travel, right? Like that's why career design is such a different way of looking at it. So when we do career design, which is done at a handful of American universities, it comes out of Stanford, from their design school at Stanford, and it basically translates design thinking into, hey, you're a student and designers love problems. And as a student, your biggest problem is figuring out what you're going to do with your life, right? So let's take a design approach to solving that problem. And by the way, it's iterative. And by the way, it'll change. So you should design in pencil, not in pen, because you need to be able to adapt as you get new information in. It's so important for these students to learn flexibility. The other thing is we're helping students try to find jobs that don't exist yet, right? Like with AI and automation, really not even arriving on the scene until the last couple of years in the way that it has, and it'll continue to grow so quickly and develop so quickly, and the impact is not yet realized. New career opportunities are arising every day so I would never want a student to say, I'll be happy when I'm this. That job might not be around anymore. And a new job might have taken its place that'll be more exciting to you.
You touched on it a little bit in the last answer. How do I build a network? Like, how important do you think it is?
I think it's so vital. I have heard so many people talk about it's not what you know, it's who you know. And there is so much value and importance in that statement. It is, of course, a little bit about what you know because you can't be a buffoon, but who you know will open doors. And when I think about, and when I work with students and I think about like the people that I mentor, is a difference between mentors and sponsors. And I think that as a young person, you need to access both very intentionally. And a mentor is definitely someone, and I say this with a few mentees that I work with myself from around the country, someone that'll challenge you and ask you hard questions that maybe make you a little uncomfortable, but with your growth in mind, right? Finding the right mentor for me was someone that would hold my feet to the fire when I needed it. And when I knew I would be resistant to some things, they'd be the people that would really challenge me to push through that, to grow and to continue to grow throughout my career. Sponsors are a little different. Sponsors are the people that will speak about me in a positive way in rooms that I am not in and probably will never access. And for me, an ability that I've had to grow my career and level up so quickly to the role that I'm in is I have been really intentional in cultivating those sponsors and making sure that I make very clear to people that are in powerful positions, maybe not on my team or in my vertical, but putting myself out there and networking while at work and demonstrating, hey, here's are the things that I really care about. And these are the things that I'd love to learn more about. And this is where I think I could best support your team or your vision. Because when they go back and they talk to senior leaders or something, they're going to be like, hey, have you met this Sean guy? Like, he seems like he's really up and coming. He seems like he's ready to get his hands dirty. And those types of people can sometimes advance your career so quickly. And the sad thing is you might just not know it unless they come back and they're like, oh, I was talking to the CEO and I mentioned your name, by the way, in case you hear. But those two different relationships are very valuable. And then the other thing I like to kind of touch on is there are two different experiences and relationships that you could have. One could be awareness building, which is kind of uncovering or enlightening you on things that maybe you didn't know existed, or maybe it's peeling back a layer. And we help students with that through shadowing, right? Like through just getting an exposure to a job, seeing what it's really about. I say this famously, like our students, like a lot of them will come in and say, I want to be a doctor. And I say, okay, great. Why do you want to be a doctor? Like what went into that decision? Oh, I want to help people. Okay, great. That's admirable. Wonderful. Are you aware of other jobs that also help people? Right. And I don't know, like what, like a therapist or like, and I say, yeah, sure. Those are jobs and they're great. Well, have you ever do you know what a doctor does day to day? Like, have you ever seen a day in the life of a doctor? Well, no, I mean, I have a doctor. Okay. Well, then you're a patient, right? There's that customer service angle and stuff. But do you know what happens when they leave the room, what they do? And the students say no. And before I have a student commit to going to medical school and doing a residency and an internship and then, having all that debt, I say, you should have a really great awareness of what a doctor really does day to day. That's so valuable. Same thing with an investment banker, same thing with a sales and marketing executive, same thing all across the board. And then we challenge to say, like, okay, where else can we grow that awareness? Okay, you found this, you shadow, like, who else can you talk to learn more? What questions should you be asking? What did you learn about yourself? So you could say, how did these jobs butt up against or really align with my values? And then the other thing is the skill building work, right? Like, so people that can actually put you in a position to grow your skill set, or give you access to being able to solve problems and demonstrate skills that you have. So awareness is important, skills are important. You should have a good mix of both that you're building your network around. And it's just something I don't think people think about as like the utility of the different people that you align yourself with.
I think just identifying and knowing that you're looking for mentors and sponsors, like, because sometimes people get so caught up in having a conversation with a potential mentor that they like overthink it, they try and impress this person. But like, if they're just looking for a sponsor, it's like, just let them be aware of you and impress them slightly, and your name might come up.
Absolutely. And that again, it is a skill in itself to understand where you're going to focus a lot of your energy and your time, including in each conversation. And you're absolutely right. Getting a clearer understanding of what the relationship can be, how it can be transformative for you is helpful, because it should dictate kind of what you're putting into the conversation. It should dictate like how you're approaching it. Absolutely right.
What's like, me in my second year of university didn't even think about networking or like building that network. I don't think a lot of people do. What's the first small step that someone should take?
I like to have people. So again, the future is very grainy for people. It's hard to see the future. And like you mentioned, you shut down, right? Like if you get stumped on a question, you can really shut down. I like to think and put people in a position to understand and fully appreciate. So reflection on how people have had networking impact in their life in getting to where they are. So looking backward is something that a lot of people are actually, they can access it more easily and more accurately in their mind. Like it's easy for someone to look back and say, wow, you know what? I like where I'm sitting. Who are all the people that had a direct impact on me getting here, right? Or I love being on this project. Who had an impact on that? And how did I alert and put myself out there to say that's something that is real, that's out there, and I want to achieve it. Looking backward is sometimes the easiest way to understand what has been successful for me, and also demystify, like, wow, I never would have picked that, but I did this activity. I wonder what it would be different if I had added this layer to it. Because as we look forward, we're notoriously bad at predicting as humans, but we're pretty good at looking back and reflecting, especially if it's guided by some very important questions.
Awesome. I think that's really helpful advice. We spoke a little bit about it. There's almost it feels sometimes there's a gap that needs to have a bridge built over it between employers and universities and students and young people. Who needs to build that gap? Because it sounds like you guys are doing a good chunk of that in what you're doing at Life and Careers Design, but I also, in my belief, I think employers could do more. What do you think about the current state of it, and who needs to do more and put more work in?
Yeah, so who needs to put more work in? Bridging that gap, I think, is a great question. My answer, I think, comes from who I am, which is I always think I should be doing more of the work. So for us, it's why it's very easy to me to say we need to be extending kind of this opportunity for us to access and understand what do employers need. Because higher education, and one of the biggest kind of complaints that I have about higher education, and I love higher ed, and I've worked in it for 16 years now. But one of the big complaints is I think that we believe that we're really good at predicting and like kind of embracing what we do and saying it should matter. But again, just like that storytelling capability, if we aren't understanding and empathizing with the person and their needs, which are changing much more quickly than higher education tends to change, we're going to be resistant to actually providing a good, decent service to both our students and then those employers, which harms the partnership, right? Whenever we build partnerships partnerships, we should always be looking at someone's SWOT analysis, like understanding how would they identify their organization's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and how can we support on the opportunities or threat side, and really kind of also ask them the question of what we can be doing. On my office, I've asked my team to build an employer advisory board because I know success for me is my students being able to go out there and get great jobs and have immediate kind of return on that investment. I don't feel bad about saying that. You should, if you put in so much effort to higher education and internships and learning, you should have a return on that investment. It should be there. So the best way I can kind of support that is say, hey, all these different types of employers that are interesting to our student, what are you looking for, right? Like, how can we build pathways? How can we give you access to our students earlier, right? Because that's something that higher ed doesn't love to do either, but there's a real value. I've seen the impact of paid internships, right? Like when a student in going from their junior to senior year, their third year to fourth year, get a really great paid internship with a really quality employer, oftentimes it ends with a job offer. And for a student to go through their entire fourth year of college, knowing that they just need to do really well and focus and continue learning, but they have a job sitting at the end, they feel really empowered and they feel really strong and they feel really confident. And that's what I want my students to feel. So I think it is on us as institutions. I also I can say confidently that at every institution I've worked at, when I reach out across the aisle to employers, bridging that gap and say, hey, I'd love to just chat about what is it that you need? What are you seeing from our students? They have always been more than generous with their time, more than generous with their honest, candid feedback. So I think that really higher ed is just not doing the job of asking those questions, and just really putting ourselves out there once again and saying like, hey, what are things we could be focusing on that would really help you onboard students more efficiently? Right? Because an employer is going to love that. If they get more productivity quicker out of an employee, that's great for them. And if we can start that on ramping for them, I've never met an employer that's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not trying to do that right now.
Okay, great. I think it's a really important gap to be looking at and closing, so it's cool to hear about how you guys are thinking on it. I think something I want to get your perspective on as well is that obviously a degree used to feel like the thing that got your foot in the door and also got you half the way there. Like, you know, and then maybe the rest of you would take it there. Now it feels like it's a foot in the door and like nothing more. What more do young people need to be doing alongside their degree or with their degrees to stand out?
I think that in addition to the storytelling and the ability to understand their own story and make better choices as they go through, applied learning, experiential learning is really something that's going to set some students apart, but also students that are just willing to work during their degree. I work with I talk to a lot of employers, right? Like we had 70 employers in our house today, right? Like just to kind of start meeting with students. And universally employers will say to me, if I see a student with no employment history, and that doesn't mean a professional job after college, right? They know that that's not a realistic expectation to have. But if they see a student that hasn't worked and they can get concerned a little bit about, wow, work is different than a lot of other areas of life in that in work, you have to do things that you don't like sometimes. You have to do things you hate. And if I don't know that a student's aware of that, and the first time they see that, are they going to shut down? Are they going to quit? I mean, that's a real fear that employers have expressed to me. Part-time jobs, working over summers, working on-campus employment, basically any kind of work is good work, in my opinion. And I'm someone that I drove a tow truck. I was a bartender. I've done a lot of different things in my life because I always wanted to work. I just really loved working. I loved building and I loved generating and work gave that to me. And it's something I've never had trouble talking about. And it's something that I've always been asked about when I'm interviewing is kind of this relationship with work, even not so directly, but throughout the questions, behavioral interview questions, and tell me about a time when, and if I can demonstrate the passion I have for working, that's really valuable. So I know that like, it's hard because you have to split kind of your time and manage it. But that becomes another part of the story that you can tell to an employer of how well you manage your time, especially when you have competing priorities.
Cool. I got like our penultimate question, and then we'll go with the last one. Um, Obviously, there's this point then people start their careers. Young people now, they want things fast. They want to grow into their career fast. They want to grow the corporate ladder fast. They want to move quick, quick, quick. How can they do that once they land a job? Like, how do I show up and on my first day create impact?
Yeah. So it's interesting. I've hired a lot of people now, and I've been in leadership roles since I've been hiring people since probably 2005. And that's my first manager job. And I can speak for myself, but I can also speak for people that I've trained with and manager institutes and things. The one thing I've constantly heard is a person that gets the job done. And when I mean gets the job done, it's like it's without complaining, it's just getting work done. It gets noticed. What I would say is students should focus on getting the job done well, but also getting the job done and understanding how to advocate for their good work. It's not bragging. It's really just being able to know who to talk about the work with, who you can engage with. This is where like making sure that you have sponsors that you can engage. When I talk to sponsors, I talk about the hardest project that I have solved or completed lately, because I want them to bring that to the executive leadership levels, right? If they're sitting at that table and I just did hard work, and then I can relay that information to one of the people I've identified as a sponsor for myself, that's important. So making sure that you're thoughtful. And again, it's not just to do like, hey, I collated these 50 copies and now I want to brag about it. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like when you can demonstrate your problem solving skills, managing tough relationships or communications, moving things from start to completion, often by yourself, like just taking things on, growing your role, expanding your role. I love talking to my sponsors about how I've expanded my role since I've gotten on the job, because that information, nobody gets mad at you if you're doing more work or better work or stronger work. But people also need to hear about it. And that's one area that I think current college students really struggle with, is that self-advocacy. I don't know what to attribute that to. But being intentional about being a good, strong self-advocate, I think brings you a lot further and faster in your career.
Yeah, 100%. I want to ask you a little bit of a different final question, Sean, which is just because like I think you have a lot to share and I think it's different and I want to make sure people get a chance to tap into that. So the final question is like, is there anything that we haven't covered today that you're hearing young people talk about a lot or care about a lot that you think needs to be spoken about?
You know what's interesting? This is a really great question to really identify what I'm hearing with my ear to the ground with students, what they're talking about, what they care about. I hear, and this obviously could have geographic, socioeconomic issues, because I'm with I'm in Massachusetts in the United States, so like obviously where I am plays a role in this. I have a lot of students that want to talk about what is fair and what is just, and I I always try to caution students that there are very few things in this life and in this world that are black and white. I think that a lot of times students see something and instead of I don't tell them that they should shut down their values. That is never what I would say. What I would say is instead of you having this idea that what is happening here is incredibly wrong and what is happening here is incredibly right, what does that tell you about the values that govern your life and the things that are important to you? And how would it feel if even one of those values was a little different? And maybe can you identify someone in your life that might not share that value, but you still respect? And humanizing the differences that we have, in my opinion, and I think this is tough as an American right now too, in my opinion, um, we have like an all or nothing kind of viewpoint. And it's really challenging because we see it in our internal politics. We see it at scale in organizations where it's like, I can't work with them because of some, ideological difference, whatever it is. But the real work gets done in the middle, almost always. of people from different areas coming together, unifying in service to a project or something that they can advance. And to me, a real strength. And if a young person wants to transition that, I am strong because I have staunch beliefs and I cannot reject those beliefs. But if I can instead find a way to work with people that maybe don't share my beliefs, especially if it's not germane to the specific issue that we're working on, right? Um, if I can find a way to work with those people and grow respect and have them respect me more and me respect them more in service to a project or a goal that we have, that is work that should be loud work. That's very important work. And it should continue to break down these barriers of they're over here and I'm over here. Because if we go into work like that, our organizations lose, our entire employment culture loses. And really, I think that's something that, they've been taught to believe. Like if you're right, if you believe in this value and you're right with it, like reject everything else. And I don't think that that's the best way.
I think it's a really great parting message for young people. One of the difficult things they'll have to deal with in their first job is working with people that have different beliefs and thoughts about the world and how it should be, and getting good at navigating that. It's critical, especially with the way things are growing. So, Sean, it's been really fun to have you on. I think you have so much wisdom and a wealth of knowledge in this stuff. Where should people go if they want to learn some more about you, or anything like that?
I think the most exciting thing is LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I use it constantly. I know you're using LinkedIn because I see your posts. I love it. I think that's a great place because I respond to all my direct messages on there, and I'm always trying to, hear from people. And I use LinkedIn as a primary news feed for myself. I really do, because the work I do, it's so important to the culture of the work that I do to hear this kind of business wisdom that's coming in. So I would encourage people always, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. And you can see what we're doing at the Life and Career Design Institute at Wheaton College, Massachusetts, over here in Massachusetts, United States. And that's kind of the exciting design work, and which I talk about on LinkedIn too. You could always see me linking.
Awesome. Sean, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, George. I really appreciate it being here, and I love what you're doing. I really think it's important and valuable, and I just can't express that enough.